What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another daily drop brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me, you guys know who he is. It's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here for another Carolina basketball-related drop. And in this one, we're kind of going to be talking about the future of the Smith Center, maybe some redevelopment plans, what could happen with it, what makes sense for not only, such an historic arena, but for such an historic program in a lot of different ways. So interested to see some of your insights and thoughts on maybe how it could be redeveloped and maybe some things that are going on behind the scenes that you've heard about with maybe plans or things that they wanted to happen that didn't end up happening. So I haven't really had a conversation with you about this. This is completely organic, and I'm looking forward to kind of hearing what you may have to say about it. So AJ, talk to me about the future of the Dean Dome and, maybe what's going on behind the scenes with some of that.
I recently had a conversation about this with someone who's exceptionally well placed. This is very well sourced information about options. Mm-hmm. And there are options. If anybody's been to the Dean Dome in the last couple of years, it needs some work. It's not very pretty on the outside. I really think they need to do something at the very least to just kind of, beautify the outside.
I'm surprised they haven't too, because that seems easy to me. I'm surprised they haven't.
Yeah, if the bowels of the arena aren't great, but they don't really, I think the best part about the Dean Dome is when you're in your seats. Mm-hmm. I actually I don't have a problem that there's no luxury suites there. I sort of look at it as a massive old style bandbox arena. The old bandbox arenas were great in college sport and college basketball, and this is a massive one, but it's very big, and there are times where they don't fill it, and they have a lot of issues that have to be hurdled in order to figure out where they want to go with this. I can tell you right now that there have been things explored, from building an entirely new arena to how they would renovate the Dean Dome and what they would do. I could tell you that one of the things that has a lot of people interested in embracing the idea of a new arena is it would eliminate the lifetime seat licensing that is inside the Smith Center. When they built the Smith Center, a lot of people donated a lot of money and they bought seats for life. That's how they were able to build the Dean Dome originally, all on private funding.
Interesting.
So those people still sit in those seats. They have them for life. So they're not really making money off those seats. The best seats in the house, that's one of the reasons they kicked the media off the baseline a long time ago, so they could sell those annually. And then they kicked us out from sitting above the students, the risers, because now it opened it up, they could sell those as well. They need to make revenue. So they're not making, if there's 21,750 people in the building, which is a full house, they're not making money off ticket sales to all 21,750. So they need to find new revenue streams and also to create a better atmosphere. They just can't take the people sitting in the first 20 rows around the court, just move them. They own those seats for life. As long as a Dean Dome is in existence, they own those seats for Carolina basketball games. So building a new arena would eliminate that. They would start over. And a lot of the licensing there would go in money for luxury suites. Like when NC State built all their additions to Carter Finley Stadium, other than the Murphy Center, which Wendell paid for by himself, they had people pay for the luxury suites. Then they used that to build those and do a bunch of other upgrades to the stadium. I could see Carolina, if they were to build a new arena, sell those luxury suites for mint cash, and those people can sit there, and that could take care of a lot, not all of it, but a lot of the private funding that would be needed to do this. So what are the options? Well, if you know about the new Target, the fairly new Target on the other side of Granville Towers, just off Franklin Street. Yeah. That was actually a proposed site at one point for a new arena. There were some very influential people at UNC in the athletic department that thought, if we're going to do a new building, this is the place to do it. But it was kind of overruled, so to speak, and a Target is there now. So as it stands, there is no other place on campus where they could actually build a new arena except one. The only spot would be in the current Bowls lot, which is the parking right next to the arena. But that's used for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, football.
It's not just used for basketball.
Yeah,
but it's used for a
student
ton
parking.
Of stuff during the school. Yeah. Go down there at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday.
Oh, it's a massive parking lot for the university. Yeah, it's massive.
So the logistics of it would be very difficult. So if they did that, it would take a couple of years to build an arena, and everything would be thrown out of whack for a couple of years. So it's already tough enough to get in and out of that joint as it stands. Imagine how much more difficult it would be if they had a massive construction project going on. Now, would it be worth it? Once it's all done, said and done, I think people would look back and say, yeah, I'm glad we have this now. But getting a lot of people to agree to go through that, and there's a lot of people that would have to say yay on something like this in order to pull the trigger on it, that would be very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. So I could keep going on with some of the other options. Maybe you want to comment on those two things real quickly, and I can then go on to some of the other ones.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That way I'm not talking for 10 straight minutes.
Nah, you're good. And, you're the one who had the conversations with, like you said, extremely well-sourced for people. So, I think building it on a Franklin Street area makes a ton of sense. I understand why. Well, I don't really understand why people wouldn't want to do that, but I guess I'm not surprised that, whoever was being a part of those conversations didn't want to do it. I can kind of see what maybe issues would arise with that. But for me, that is a great idea for a spot when you consider that's kind of the hub of North Carolina, right in the middle of campus. Obviously a very busy area, and I think it would just make a ton of sense for pregame, postgame stuff. I think it'd just be an awesome place to have an arena. Redeveloping in the Bowls lot, I see the logistical issues that come along with that as well. And, and I guess I'll ask the question to you. I know you're probably going to hit on this, I'm guessing, but when you look at the other options, I guess the only two other options that I could think of is to tear the Smith Center down and build it there. I don't know how that works with where would Carolina play in the meantime. And B, off campus. Is that realistic? Because there is area in and around North Carolina or UNC that is vacant land, but I don't know. And I would be surprised if the higher ups at North Carolina wanted to move the Smith Center off campus when you consider that, the football stadium's right in the middle of campus. The basketball stadium's right in the middle of campus. Heck, the only really thing off campus is really the softball stadium. So it is a university that likes to have everything kind of in-house and on campus, and moving your biggest brand and biggest, I'm not necessarily revenue generator, but the thing that people know when they think Carolina basketball, moving that off campus doesn't necessarily seem like a realistic option based on what I'm hearing from you and what I would assume higher ups in North Carolina would want to do.
Yeah, you also have to consider traffic flow. And for example, if they would, let's say that everyone would have been on board at the university to build on the spot where the Target is now, they would still have to get road construction there. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get people going out Franklin Street. Just that would be unbearable. It'd be impossible to pull off.
Yeah, it'd be impossible.
So no matter what they do, if you build something new, other than if you do something in the Bowls lot, even then you're still going to have traffic pattern flows that change a little bit. And I still think that there are a lot of people that would like to incorporate that into where things are now, because traffic can be really, really bad for basketball and really bad for football too. So especially post game, it's awful for people that leave right after, especially a night game when everyone's kind of leaving at the same time. Yeah. So, as far as renovation goes or tearing down, if they gutted the Smith Center and rebuilt something new and did enough renovation that it would no longer constitute as being the same arena, therefore it would nullify those lifetime seat owners, they would still have to find somewhere else to play for 2 years. It would take 2 years. Remember, Clemson renovated Littlejohn about 6 years ago, and they played in Greenville for a year. Nobody showed up, and it really hurt them. They had a good team that year, but they had a great schedule. But they played Alabama at home in front of 4,000 people or something. If that had been in Littlejohn, it would have been a full house, and they would have had an advantage. So that was just basic renovation. They want luxury suites. They want to get this thing down to about 17,000, 17,500. That's a major project that will take a couple of years to do, especially if enough renovation is done that those seats are nullified, that they no longer, you start from scratch again. So where would they play? Well, they've looked into options. You can't play at Carmichael. The nostalgic people want them to play there at 6,500 seats. It's not logical. Doesn't make sense. They would lose a ton of money. PNC wouldn't be an option.
Yeah, no, that's
Greensboro
not happening.
Coliseum. No, the Greensboro Coliseum would probably be the best option. Yeah. And you're talking about playing home games 60 miles from campus. That's not going to fly over too well. I think that they would draw pretty well for a lot of games. I think the Duke game would sell out there, but maybe State, maybe Virginia, that kind of thing, but it wouldn't be the same. And maybe under the current leadership of the program, it'd be a little bit more difficult to do. I think, Roy would be able to sustain Carolina basketball through that kind of transition. It'd be a little bit harder for Hubert because Hubert isn't established yet. That's also one of the concerns. So any kind of renovation that would cause them to have to play somewhere else would be a tremendous issue because there aren't a bunch of great options. Now, I asked a question about what about renovating in increments where it's not so intrusive that you could still operate in the facility. So you do it in, let's say, eighths or twelfths. You just kind of do it going around. And that way there might be a section here and there, the Dean Dome, that you can't put fans, but so it's maybe 18 or 19 instead of 20, nearly 22. That's fine, but you still get to play there. You still get to use it. And over time, it will change. And that is something that has been explored too, but I was told that it would cost twice as much. So for the sake of discussion, let's say we're talking about a $300 million price tag. That would make it $600 million. And it would take twice as long.
Yeah.
So a 2-year renovation would turn into a 4-year renovation. So you would have an entire class of players come in and play in the Dean Dome in which there was something being renovated the whole time. That would be enough of an eyesore, enough of an irritant that it wouldn't give anybody the entire full experience. But it would be a way of staying on campus, staying there, playing home games there, and maybe operating as close to normal as possible for that period of time.
Yeah. To me, and we won't go too much longer on this, but to me, I get why Carmichael is maybe not an option in terms of revenue. But to me, Carmichael's the easiest answer. It's literally right there. And I know it doesn't seat 20,000 people, but still 6,500 people. And if that's what it takes to renovate a stadium for 2 years, that, let's face it, I mean, North Carolina is one of the biggest programs in college basketball.
Yeah, it needs so much lost revenue. It's so much
and I get
revenue.
that, but do you not lose revenue in Greensboro? Do you not lose revenue in? I mean, Carolina doesn't have options, AJ. So it's almost like a beggars can't be. What is it?
I just don't think. I don't see Carmichael happening. Yeah, for the same reason why we discussed why they wouldn't even play one game a year in Carmichael. I don't see Carmichael happening.
It just to me seems like the only realistic
it's
option.
Not. If you go into Carmichael and go into every nook and cranny, it can't sustain this program.
Even for maybe 2 years, you don't think they could do something like that? Because to me,
they
that's
would
the
have
only
to
option.
spend a lot of money. They would have to spend a ton of money to upgrade Carmichael to be able to do it. So they would be operating at a loss before they even knock down one thing at the Dean Dome. I just don't. And they would have to charge a lot more for tickets to try to make it. If let's say they have 16,000 tickets spoken for every year. Suddenly you have 6,500. Some of those have to go to visiting teams and all that kind of stuff. It would be a nightmare for the Rams Club with fundraising. It would affect so many things that they wouldn't be able to pull it off. They just wouldn't be able to pull it off. It would be easier to play in Greensboro because at least that way they could satisfy ticket demand. And if you could satisfy ticket demand, you keep the donors happy because there's nothing's going to piss off a donor more than being the guy you're chosen to not go to games this particular year because we're not honoring your patronage for the last 30 years. We're honoring this other guy's.
Yeah.
That would be too difficult for them to deal with. It's not just a matter of, hey, the arena's right there. There's so many logistics at play that would make that too challenging. And then we'll take your money again when we have seating for you. A lot of people are going to say, screw you. So I don't see them going that path. I think ultimately, and I can tell you that they've looked at other designs to bring it down. They do want to bring it down. They've looked at Tennessee's design at Thompson-Boling Arena, which was very similar to the Dean Dome, actually a tiny bit bigger. And they gutted one part of that and they put in a bunch of luxury suites. I mean, if they could do something like that in 8 months, then do it. But it's possible to do. Especially Thompson-Boling Arena is a stand-up structure. Across the street is a football stadium. Remember, the Dean Dome is connected to the natatorium. Mm-hmm. So there's only so much you could do right there. And there's not a lot of other space on the other side of it because it's built almost into that hill. So they have a lot of challenges ahead to figure out what they're going to do with the future home of North Carolina basketball. I think ultimately, if they decide to build a new arena, they're going to do it right there in the bowl slot. That's just my gut. That's not a source telling me that, because that is one way where they can sacrifice 2 years to go play somewhere else, maybe in Greensboro, and then have a state-of-the-art facility that you can use for 60 years.
Yeah.
And make a ton of money and get rid of the seat license people.
Yeah.
Not
it just kind of feels
make them buy regular tickets.
I didn't even know that was a thing. And I think it's probably not great anymore, because, I mean, it was 40 plus years ago the Smith Center was built.
Well, the thing about it is, one of the mistakes they made, and this is also what the source told me, one of the mistakes they made that when they did this was they didn't sort of draw into a contract, if you will. Okay, you have these seats for 20 years. After that, you got to pay a tax. Mm-hmm. Because we won't be able to make any more revenue off this. So pay a tax, and it'd be a heavy tax. It wouldn't have to follow any standard of tax. They can apply their own tax essentially. And if you want to keep the seats, then you got to pay that tax, but they don't have that. If they had that, I think it would be a little bit different. They need to make more revenue. They're not bringing in cash that they should be able to bring in. They have 28 sports to support. And that's more than anybody else. The next closest in the ACC, I think UVA has 22. Virginia Tech has 21. So that's 6 more sports they have to fund. And football can't do it all. TV money can't do it all. They need these ticket sales. Mm-hmm. And they need luxury suite money. They need big donors forking over cash because they want to be at that Duke game. And it's kind of hard to do that right now with a lot of them. And that would help pay for fencing. It would help pay for softball and everything else. And also help the basketball program. They could pour a lot of money back into stuff. They could get more revenue. You could do so much with it. And that would be the mission. So They got a lot of things to figure out. And I don't really think they have a lot of options.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
it's just that they're not great. It's just they're not options that people would want to have to deal with.
Yeah. Last thing I'll ask you, and then we'll head out. In terms of a timetable of when this might happen, the reason I'm asking you this is I remember Carolina putting out conceptual plans to the public for a renovation of the Smith Center 10 years ago. Nothing's happened. Yeah. So to me,
I saw those.
It seems like a situation where there's not an easy answer. So it's like, well, we'll push it back. We'll figure it out next year, and we'll figure it out next year. Do you is there any timetable? Is it like, hey, by 2035, we want a brand new Smith Center in Chapel Hill, or is it just like, we'll see what happens?
Yeah, I wasn't told that, but I will say this: common sense would say that as each year passes, the price tag goes up on what they need to renovate.
Exactly,
as is. So if you're good, you don't want to go spend $85 million or $100 million to renovate just because you got to renovate. If 5 years later you're just going to build something new. So I think that this is a pressing situation. I think it's one in which conversations are had a lot more than people realize. And there are a lot of people of influence who are on different fences on this one. There's a lot of them, as we've discussed. So I think that if they do end up building a new arena like in the Bulls lot, it was something that they would probably have to do fairly soon.
Yeah.
Because the Dean Dome needs renovation. If you walk in the bowels of it, you go to the places that you and I go when we cover games, it needs a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It's awesome when you're in there where the game is.
Yeah, it's sweet.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's a work of art. Mm-hmm. But it's not very nice on the outside. And if you're just kind of cruising around before you get to the court area, it needs work. Mm-hmm. It needs a lot of work. So, and that's all part of the deal, because that's what recruits see. There's a reason when you walk through the Keenan Football Center, why it's basically in nonstop renovation. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge. They're always painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. They start over here, take several years, they get to the end, and then they go back and do it again. Mm-hmm. The Keenan Football Center is kind of like that. Well, the Dean Dome isn't. And they know that a lot of money needs to be poured into it, but they're trying to decide what the best way to go about this is. So it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not having to make that decision, because like we've discussed, it isn't black and white. There isn't a great answer. It almost seems like it almost feels like Carolina's in like a beggars can't be choosers situation. Like, we need to do something, but we don't really like these options. So we'll just kind of wait. It's almost like you just kind of got to pull the trigger, figure it out and do it. And maybe Carolina will ultimately get to that point sooner rather than later. But
legally challenge the duration, how long that those people have owned those things. See if there's something, those attorneys that have looked at all the grant of rights stuff, maybe send them on to that original contract. Yeah. Because a lot of the people who paid that money unfortunately, they're no longer around. So
I know.
there's no inheritance tax. There's none of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of money that the university has lost because they're not raking in bucks for those seats.
Yeah, that is why I'm surprised. I mean, I get why they probably agreed to it, but yeah, in hindsight, it just 40 years later, it's just like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that, or I should have had some kind of clause in there because.
Well, they had to get the arena built.
Yeah, and
they did it with private funds, and it was actually, it was such a huge deal at the time. If you go back and read old clippings, that the dean was so proud that, hey, our program's so big that we built this thing with private money, and it was operated privately for a long time. They used to host concerts there and all kinds of stuff. And after a while, that just wasn't feasible. So I think the time has come where a decision has to be made. And if they renovate and keep things as is, they need to figure out a way to add spots for increased revenue or find a way to get some of the people out of the seats. What they're going to have to do.
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely needs to be. I've always said I've been to the Spectrum Center.
Because all those dudes have attorneys too, right?
Oh yeah, of course, man. It's not as black and white as anything. And I always tell people, like, the Smith Center is a tight arena. And if you don't know what I'm saying, I'm sure a lot of people, North Carolinians who are listening to this, have been to the Spectrum Center where the Hornets play, and a lot of NCAA regionals there, and Carolina's played there a ton. You walk in that arena and you say, okay, it's so much more, it's probably seats about the same, but it's so much more spacious. There's so much more luxury box. There's so much more amenities. And the Smith Center is a great arena historically, and it's a great place to watch a game, but it's tight, it's cramped, it's not very spread out. There's no, like you said, box seats. And a program as big as North Carolina needs to kind of step into the 21st century, for lack of a better word. I'm not hating on the Smith Center because, like I said, I think it's fantastic.
It has one concourse for 22,000 people.
I know. It just, in today's world, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense.
I agree. I mean, I love it inside there. I like the fact that it's so different.
Oozes history. Yeah.
But it doesn't personally affect me with what I do.
No.
Other than, and even the traffic, I go so early and I leave so late. I mean, game ends at 9 o'clock, game ends at 11. When do I roll out of the Dean Dome?
Yeah.
3:30.
There's about 2 people in the parking lot at that point, if you're lucky.
Well, the guys that clean afterwards are long gone.
Yeah, there's about 2 cars in the parking lot, you and somebody else in the media more than likely, or a janitor cleaning up. I mean, it doesn't really affect us, but yeah, it's just a lot of improvements can be made to the Smith Center, and I think a I think a redevelopment probably makes the most sense for North Carolina.
I'd like to know what people listening think.
We definitely want to hear from you guys.
Makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And if the Tar Heels had to play in Greensboro for 2 years, would you go?
I think a lot of people would. I mean, Greensboro is such a big market too. A ton of Carolina fans in and around that area. There's probably people that live in that Greensboro, Winston-Salem area that would absolutely love if Carolina came and played there for 2 years, because they could go to a heck of a lot more games. And the Greensboro Coliseum's a great arena too. So I know it's a little bit older as well, but I think that'd be pretty cool. And I think that makes sense. I think the biggest inconvenience with that would be more so for the staff and the players than necessarily like fans. I think fans would be just fine with that in terms of the state of North Carolina. There's just too many Carolina fans around here. So yeah, get involved though. We want to hear from you guys. Come get involved on Twitter, links below at Hill Illustrated, on our Facebook at Tar Heel Illustrated as well. And come over to our site. You can sign up for just $8.33 a month. You can get involved in our premium message boards where we post every single content item that we put out. So we want to hear from you guys in all those spaces, or you can reach out to me directly too at Jacob Turner THI. Give me a follow over there as well. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of The Daily Drop. Appreciate y'all watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell too. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.